All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at some artwork. First, we're going to look at some flower reference images. I have a link to an entire folder of really beautiful flower reference images. The reason why I want you to see them is because I don't want you to just pick the obvious imagery. I want you to look at all the different shapes and patterns that that make up different types of flowers so that you can sort of think outside the box. So once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at the 53 most colorful insects in the world. That's a web page. And let's go to colorful reference images of most colorful insects. So let's just look through these real quick. So we can look at color, line, pattern, just looking at the different types of interesting insects. Let's just see. Let's look at a few of them. And I'm going to point out a few things. All right, so let's look at line. Let's look at symmetry. Let's look at balance. Let's look at shapes. Again, line, shapes, repetition, rhythm, pattern, color, contrast. So while you're looking at these things and looking at these lines and colors and patterns and contrasts, I want you to think about how these bright patterns and bright colors protect these animals. So if an animal is a stinging animal and they have these bright colors and a larger animal comes along and eats this animal and they get a sting inside their mouth, they're going to spend the rest of their lives avoiding any animal that has that pattern. Or if the animal is poisonous or doesn't taste good or has hard armor and hurts the predator, they're going to avoid animals that have those distinctive markings for the rest of their lives. So this is a way that these animals can protect themselves. Just by having these bright colors, it sort of acts as a warning sign. And having a very distinctive pattern can also help an animal to blend into its environment. So keeping that in mind, an animal may want to blend in, but it may also want to stand out. So you've got to think about those sorts of things and how these dots and patterns and stuff, in addition to being practical from a human perspective, they're very beautiful and can be incorporated into the designs we choose to make. So those are some colorful insects, some colorful flowers. Now I want you to look at some artists that design flowers. So there's Dale Chihuly. There's actually several different artists that we're going to take a look at. Kusama is an interesting artist. She's a Japanese artist in her 90s. And apparently, when she was younger, she had some sort of psychotic episode where she saw dots and patterns all around her. And this experience actually influenced her work. But she creates these very creative imaginary flowers. They're not anything like real flowers. They're completely out of her imagination, but you can see that they're inspired by real flowers. So these obviously look somewhat like tulips, but there's not a real tulip in the world that has this sort of patterns or dots on it. So you don't have to copy nature. You can get inspired by nature and then make your own thing, which is exactly what she did. So rather than copying her style, I encourage you to look at nature and develop your own style. keeping in mind things like shapes, patterns, repetition, symmetry, balance, rhythm. You can actually create your own imaginary flower in your own style using other artists as an inspiration. So let's go back here and let's look at another artist, Dale Chihuly. Now, he's a glass artist, but he does create a lot of these very wacky sort of garden sculptures that look like plants. Again, there's not a real plant in the universe that looks like these. He creates them himself, but you can see that they're inspired by natural forms. Like this looks actually like it could be a sea urchin, but it also could be, there's a flower called allium, which is a kind of a blue puffball that kind of looks like this. And these are actually planted in a garden, so they're actually kind of look like they're, the actual plants. These are, of course, flower forms. Some of them very clearly real flowers, and some of them just based on his imagination. So I'll let you look at these on your own, but I just wanted to give you sort of a jumping off point. So let's see. From a completely different perspective, I want to show you these rose windows from some medieval and Gothic churches. So these are, while not flower forms, they have radial symmetry like many flowers do, and they can be used as an inspiration or a jumping off point for some of your own ideas. And some of them really clearly are based on flowers. So now that we've gotten some inspiration from some flower forms and some other artists and some nature, let's go to the assignment. We're going to be creating an original flower, and we're also going to be creating an original insect that is going to be the pollinator for this flower. So all flowers have to have some sort of a pollinator insect that takes the pollen from one plant to another, unless they have some other means of pollinating, like through the wind or through animals eating the flowers. But generally, you have insects that pollinate flowers. So first off, let's go back to the assignment, and it says here, design a seed packet. One of the things that we'll be doing after we create our flower is we're going to be creating an original seed packet. So we're going to pretend to sell the flower. So we're going to invent a name for the flower. We're going to create a beautiful illustration on here. We're going to create an imaginary company that sells the flower, and we're going to create a seed packet for the flower. Then our next assignment will be that some people are going to be allergic to this flower, and they're going to be coughing, they're going to be sneezing, and they will need a tissue box. So we're going to design a tissue box with this flower design on it. This is a template to create a tissue box. But first we have to create our imaginary flower and our imaginary insect. So we're going to do new file, and we're going to go to print, 8.5 by 11, 300 psi. That's fine. We're going to hit create. And now we're going to zoom in a little. And we're going to grab our brush tool. We're going to change the foreground color to a color that we like. Okay. And now with our brush tool in hand, we're going to go to the Symmetry tool. So let's see. Let's go back to the brush tool, and I'm going to show you what happens when you draw using the Symmetry tool. Okay, now this just looks like a random scribble. However, if you go to the magic wand, you can select areas of this shape. I'm going to hit the shift key. And then you can change the foreground color to a contrasting color. And you can do edit fill, foreground color, select, deselect. So you can create interesting designs by doing that. Now, the one thing though is I would never draw on the background layer. I highly suggest you don't do that. So I'm going to unlock the background and I'm going to use the magic wand and I'm going to delete the background color so it's just inside my flower. And then I'm going to go back to the brush tool, back to the symmetry tool, and I'm going to try a spiral now. So let's go back to the brush tool. Let's pick a different color. Okay, and there's my spiral. And you can see that the lines just go in a spiral. And if you want to, you can just do edit fill. Now, what's going to happen is after a while, this is going to really start looking like mud. There's just too many colors, too many designs, too many patterns. It just starts to look very scribbly. So you do have to do a little bit more planning. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just select this. And then I'm going to do edit, transform, warp. And this is kind of fun. You just kind of take your design and you can warp it in odd ways by clicking on these handles. Again, the first time you do this, it will probably just turn into a mess. But what I'm encouraging you to do is be experimental with it. So now I'm going to hit the check mark. And you have the same design, but now it's kind of in a petal shape. So now I'm going to do edit, transform, scale, and I'm going to make it smaller. And now I'm going to do edit, copy, edit, paste, edit, transform, flip horizontal. And now I'm going to take my move tool and I'm going to just kind of move it over here. So now again, edit, copy, edit, paste. Let's take our move tool and let's do edit, transform, rotate. Okay, now I've got these three kind of interesting petals. Now I'm going to take these three petals and I'm going to combine them. I'm just going to do merge down, merge down. Now all three of them are together in one layer. Now I'm going to do edit, transform, rotate. Okay. Layer, duplicate layer. Edit, transform, flip horizontal, move it over here. And you can see I'm starting to create a little pattern here. If I go to layer 0 and I add a new layer, just go down here and add a new layer. I'm going to add that to the bottom, and I'm going to do edit fill black. Now this is a layer underneath everything, but it kind of helps me to see my design. So now I'm going to do, let's see, layer, duplicate layer, edit, transform, flip vertical. Whoops, let me just lock this black layer. And now I'm going to take my new shape, and I'm going to do edit, transform, rotate. And I'll rotate it around and bring it in here. Okay, so now I've got kind of an interesting design. I think I'm going to take these 3 layers and I'm going to merge them. And now I'm going to hide this layer, and I'm going to, let me pick some nice, I don't know, let me pick a purple. That's a pretty color. All right, now I'm going to go back to my brush tool. I'm going to go to my symmetry, and let me do mandala. Okay, so segment count. Let me do 8. Okay, now let me just make this a lot smaller. And now I'm going to go back to my brush tool, and this is where it gets fun. I need a new layer first off. Okay, so now I've got this new layer that I'm in, and now I'm in my brush tool. I'm going to make my brush a little fatter, and I think I'm going to make it fuzzier, like really fuzzy. Okay, and now I'm going to start to color. And you can see whatever I do, it gets repeated 8 times. Now, the neat thing is I can also change my color. So I'm going to make it a little lighter now, and I'm going to go outside where I did before. All right, now I've got this design. Now, I'm going to unhide my other layer, and I'm going to bring it on top. And I'm going to take this layer, and I'm going to do edit, transform, scale. And I'm going to make it real tiny, and it's going to go inside here to give me the center of this flower. Okay, so I just designed a completely new flower using several different techniques. I used the Symmetry tool, and I also used edit, transform, scale, edit, transform, rotate, flip horizontal, flip vertical. I think I'm going to just make this smaller again. The other thing I did was I looked at pattern, I looked at symmetry, but I also kind of made a little bit of a mess and then kind of used that mess to duplicate it and make some petals. So now let me take this and I'm going to merge it down again. And then I'm going to do layer, duplicate layer. And then I'm going to do edit, transform, flip horizontal. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to let's see, edit, transform, rotate. And I'm going to kind of connect it to design I already did. And you can make a compound flower or a nice, very pretty pattern this way, which might look great on a tissue box or in a seed pod packet. Anyway, I'm going to just zoom out a little now. And I'm going to start thinking about things like leaves and stems. So I'm going to hide these two layers. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to go back to my brush tool and I'm going to pick a green. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my brush tool. I'm going to go back to Symmetry. And I think I'm going to pick a wavy line. Okay. So and I'm going to go to wavy line. And I'm going to make this line a heck of a lot smaller so that it actually fits on the page. Now, let me go back to my brush tool and see what I can do here. All right, let's add a new layer. And let's start out with a leaf. All right, now edit, transform, warp. Always a good idea to play around with organic shapes and see if we can make them more interesting. Once we have the shape we want, we can do edit, transform, distort. That's a fun one. And even edit, transform, skew. So we're going to try and figure out some of the possibilities in Photoshop, the ways that we can alter shapes. All right, so now let me unhide the flowers and let's figure out how this all goes together. So let's see. Let's take this flower and move it here. Right in the same document. I think that's fine. So I'm going to just add a new layer. We'll put it on top. And I think that we can go ahead and go to our brush tool. I think we can do a vertical symmetry. We'll just make this a lot smaller and kind of bring it up into the middle. And we could probably try and do a butterfly. Those are very, very simple and easy. Let's go back to our brush tool. Okay. And whatever, because I do vertical symmetry, whatever appears on that side will appear on this side. So you can play around with that as well. So I'm going to not get really too into the insect because I think that that's where you can start using your imagination and really playing around with it and experimenting. But the idea is that you're going to be creating an original flower and an original insect to pollinate that flower, and you're going to be using those designs to create a tissue box and also a seed packet. And we'll go over how to do the lettering and such at a later time. I think we might use Adobe Illustrator for the lettering so that we can get some nice, interesting curve type. But that will be another video for another day. For now, we're just going to focus on designing the flower and designing the insect, and we'll worry about using the text in our designs at a later time in a different video. All right, thank you very much.